You know that feeling when someone asks you a simple question and your mind goes completely blank? Not because you don't know the answer, but because the answer exists as this complete understanding that you can't figure out how to squeeze into words. If you're an INFJ, this probably happens to you constantly. Here's what's actually going on. Your mind doesn't think in words to begin with. It operates more like a hologram, where every piece contains the whole picture from different angles. Today, we're diving into why INFJs process information so differently from most people, and why trying to explain your thoughts can feel like describing a symphony using only Morse code. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll finally understand why your brain works the way it does. And trust me, it's actually a strategic advantage. Before we start, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our weekly deep dives into the world of personality types. And if you're looking for a deeper understanding of yourself and your INFJ personality, browse our favorite INFJ products in the description, and click the link in the comments to take our favorite free personality test. What most people don't understand about INFJ communication. Let's start with the translation problem that every INFJ knows way too well. When someone asks what you think about something, you're not just accessing one thought. You're accessing an entire network of interconnected ideas, feelings, patterns, and possibilities all at once. Most people think in a step-by-step process. They go from point A to point B to point C. Their thoughts line up neatly, like words in a sentence. But your mind works more like a web, where everything connects to everything else simultaneously. Imagine trying to download an entire movie into someone's brain, but you can only do it one word at a time. By the time you've explained the beginning, the middle and end have already shifted because you've noticed 3 new connections you hadn't seen before. This is why you freeze when asked simple questions. It's not hesitation, it's translation work. You're taking this complete, multi-dimensional understanding and trying to figure out how to express it in linear speech. You're choosing which threads to pull from the web of ideas in your mind. The exhausting part is that this happens every single time you speak. You're constantly working as an interpreter between 2 completely different languages, the language of holographic understanding and the language of linear words. Every conversation requires you to break down your thoughts into pieces, put those pieces in order, find words to represent concepts that don't really have words, and deliver it all in a way that makes sense to someone whose brain works completely differently from yours. No wonder social interactions drain you so deeply. You're not just chatting, you're performing mental gymnastics just to communicate basic thoughts. And even after all that effort, people still misunderstand you half the time, because you've condensed this rich, multi-dimensional understanding into a few sentences. They're only hearing those sentences, not the entire web of meaning behind them. It's like trying to explain a sunset to someone who's never seen colors before. The words exist, but they can't capture the actual experience. This creates the appearance that you're mystical or overthinking, when really, you're just processing differently. When someone asks how you knew something was wrong, and you say, you just had a feeling, they think you're being vague. But you're not being vague. You processed micro-expressions, tone of voice, body language, and emotional energy all simultaneously, in a fraction of a second. Try explaining that process, step by step. Impossible. So you end up sounding mysterious when you're actually using superior pattern recognition that happens too fast to retrace consciously. The energy cost of this constant translation is enormous. It's mental energy, emotional energy, sometimes even physical energy, because the effort is so intense. This is part of why you need so much alone time. When you're alone, you can let your mind work naturally, without translating everything into words. You can exist in that holographic space where everything connects beautifully, without pressure to explain it all. That's actually where you do your best thinking. Not when you're trying to articulate thoughts out loud, but when you're letting your mind wander through its natural patterns and connections. The Holographic Mind explained. So what exactly is a holographic mind? Think about how a hologram actually works. With a regular photograph, each piece of the image only shows one small part of the picture. But with a hologram, every piece contains information about the whole image. If you break a hologram into fragments, each piece still shows the entire picture, just from different angles. That's exactly how the INFJ mind operates. When you think about something, you're not just thinking about one aspect of it. You're simultaneously aware of how it connects to everything else, how it fits into the bigger picture, what it means on multiple levels, and how it might play out in different scenarios. Let's say someone mentions a friend's relationship problem. Most people might think, well, they should just talk it out. But your mind instantly lights up with 1,000 connections. You're seeing patterns from their childhood, recognizing similarities to other relationships you've observed, feeling the emotional undercurrents nobody's talking about, and projecting multiple possible futures based on different choices they might make. All of this happens in an instant. It's not linear. It's not step by step. It's all at once. And that's why it's so impossible to explain. How do you break down something that exists as a complete, interconnected understanding into sequential words? This is the difference between intuitive knowing and logical processing. Most people use logical processing, where they gather information, analyze it piece by piece, and come to a conclusion. It's like building something with blocks. You add one piece, then another, until you've got the complete structure. But INFJs use intuitive knowing. You skip right to the answer without consciously going through all the steps. It's not that you didn't process the information, you absolutely did. But it happens so fast and in such a nonlinear way that you can't retrace your steps. This is why you're so often right about things, but can't explain how you know. Someone asks, "How did you know he was lying?" And you're like, "I just knew." Because you did. You picked up on inconsistencies, micro-expressions, tone shifts, and emotional energy, all processing simultaneously in a fraction of a second. When you understand something, you understand it deeply. Not just intellectually, but on every level, emotionally, psychologically, systematically, historically. When you grasp a concept, you don't just know what it is, you know where it came from, how it developed, what it connects to, what it means for different people in different contexts, and where it's likely headed in the future. This kind of understanding doesn't happen in words. It happens in that holographic space where everything's interconnected. And it's why you can have such profound insights about things, because you're seeing the whole picture, not just one angle. The simultaneous awareness is what makes your mind so powerful, but also so difficult to translate. You're holding multiple perspectives at once, seeing how different elements relate to each other, recognizing the shape, rhythm, and flow of situations. None of that translates easily into language, because language is linear, but your understanding is multidimensional. It's like trying to describe a symphony using only Morse code. Sure, you can technically do it, but you're going to lose so much in the translation that it barely resembles the original experience. Your holographic mind contains layers of meaning, emotional resonance, pattern recognition, and intuitive leaps that sequential words simply cannot capture. This is why when people ask you to explain your thinking, you often feel frustrated. You're not being deliberately vague or mysterious. You're trying to compress something that exists in multiple dimensions into a single linear stream of words. The richness gets lost, the connections disappear, and what comes out sounds either oversimplified or confusingly complex. But here's what's important to understand. This isn't a communication failure. It's a cognitive difference. Your mind is designed to work this way, and it gives you capabilities that linear thinkers simply don't have. The pattern recognition superpower. One of the most incredible things about the holographic INFJ mind is its pattern recognition ability. You see patterns everywhere, in behavior, in conversations, in systems, in the way events unfold over time. And here's the thing about patterns. They're not verbal. They're spatial. They're relational. They exist in the connections between things, not in the things themselves. When you recognize a pattern, you're seeing how different elements relate to each other. You're seeing the shape of something, the rhythm, the flow. And none of that translates easily into words, because language is linear. But patterns are multidimensional. This is why INFJs are so good at predicting how situations will turn out. You're not psychic. You're just seeing patterns that other people miss because they're too focused on the individual pieces instead of the whole picture. You notice when someone's behavior shifts slightly, when the energy in a room changes, when a conversation is heading toward conflict before anyone raises their voice. Let me give you a real example of how this works. You walk into a meeting, and within minutes, you can sense that two people have unresolved tension, even though they're being perfectly professional. Most people won't notice anything until voices get raised, but you're picking up on micro-expressions, the way they position themselves, the subtle changes in tone when they address each other. You're not analyzing these things step by step. You're seeing the pattern of strained relationships. It's a shape you recognize from countless other situations. Your mind instantly connects this pattern to similar dynamics you've observed and predicts where it's likely to go if nothing changes. This pattern recognition extends to everything. You see patterns in how people make decisions, in how organizations function, in how problems develop over time. You notice when someone's usual communication style shifts and immediately know something's wrong. You recognize when a system is becoming unstable before it actually breaks down. The challenge is explaining these pattern-based insights to linear thinkers. When you say, "I think this project is going to fail," they want to know why. But your answer isn't based on logical analysis. It's based on recognizing a pattern of dysfunction that you've seen play out before. You might say, well, the team dynamics feel off, and the timeline seems unrealistic. But that doesn't capture what you're actually seeing. You're seeing the shape of projects that fail. The particular combination of communication breakdowns, resource constraints, and personality conflicts that creates a specific pattern you recognize. When you try to break this down into logical steps, you lose the essence of what you're seeing. It's like trying to explain why a song sounds sad by analyzing each individual note. The sadness exists in the relationships between the notes, in the overall pattern, not in any single element. This is why INFJs make such valuable advisors, strategists, and problem solvers. You can identify problems that haven't fully emerged yet because you recognize the early stages of patterns you've seen before. You can predict how people will react to changes because you understand their behavioral patterns. You can find solutions that address root causes because you see how different elements in a system connect to each other. Your pattern recognition works across time, too. You notice cycles in your own behavior, in relationships, in organizations. You see how current events echo historical patterns. You recognize when someone is repeating patterns from their past that are no longer serving them. The frustrating part is that this superior pattern recognition often makes you seem like you're overthinking or being negative. When you point out potential problems early, people might dismiss your concerns because everything looks fine on the surface. But you're seeing the underlying pattern that will eventually create those problems. This is where trusting your holographic mind becomes crucial. Just because you can't explain the logical steps doesn't mean your pattern recognition is wrong. Your mind has processed more information, more connections, and more subtle cues than your conscious verbal mind can account for. That knowing is valid and valuable, even when you can't translate it into words that satisfy linear thinkers. Why translation fails, and communication strategies that work. The fundamental problem isn't that you're bad at communication. It's that you're trying to force holographic understanding through a linear communication system. It's like trying to pour an ocean through a straw. The information is all there, but the delivery method simply can't handle the volume and complexity. This is why pausing before you speak isn't hesitation. It's necessary translation work. You're not stalling because you don't know the answer. You're choosing which threads to pull from the web of interconnected ideas in your mind. You're also anticipating how your words will be received, because part of holographic thinking means you're aware of multiple perspectives at once. So you're not just thinking about what you want to say, you're thinking about how it'll sound to the other person, what they might misunderstand, what additional context they might need. It's like playing chess, but instead of planning your next move, you're planning your next sentence, and all the possible ways it could be interpreted. This is why you're so careful with your words. You're not being uptight or overly cautious. You're just acutely aware of how much meaning can get lost in translation. You're trying to be as precise as possible, because you know that your rich, multidimensional understanding will be compressed into a few sentences. But here's what works better than trying to force verbal thinking. Metaphors and analogies become your best friends, because they're bridges. They help you take complex, holographic understanding and give people a reference point they can relate to. Instead of trying to explain the whole web of meaning, you find something similar that they already understand and say, it's kind of like this. It's not perfect, but it works better than trying to explain everything from scratch. When you say, this situation feels like a house of cards about to fall, you're conveying the pattern you're seeing, the instability, the interconnected vulnerabilities, the sense that one small disruption could bring everything down. The metaphor carries meaning that would take paragraphs to explain logically. Storytelling is another powerful tool, because stories communicate holographic understanding without breaking it into logical steps. When you tell a story, you can convey feeling, meaning, pattern, and connection all at once. The listener experiences the understanding rather than just receiving information. And that's so much closer to how your mind actually works. This is why many INFJs find writing easier than speaking. When you write, you have time to translate. You can sit with your thoughts, explore different ways of expressing them, revise until the words actually capture what you mean. You're not under pressure to respond immediately, which gives your translation process the time it needs. Plus, writing is less linear than speaking in some ways. You can use paragraphs to explore different facets of an idea. You can return to earlier points and add nuance. You can create layers of meaning that mirror the holographic nature of your thinking. Speaking, on the other hand, is real-time and sequential. Once you've said something, it's out there. You can't go back and edit it. And if someone interrupts or the conversation shifts, you might lose the thread entirely and never get to complete the translation you were working on. The key is finding people who are patient enough to let you fully express your thoughts. People who won't interrupt, who won't rush you, who understand that your way of thinking is different but valuable. When you find these people, you can take the time you need to translate properly without feeling pressured to speed up your process. Another strategy is to lead with the conclusion, then work backwards. Instead of trying to explain all the logical steps that led to your understanding, start with what you know to be true, then fill in the supporting details. This honors how your mind actually works, while giving linear thinkers the structure they need to follow your reasoning. You can also use phrases like, I'm sensing that, or it feels like, to acknowledge that your understanding comes from pattern recognition rather than logical analysis. This helps people understand that you're not making random guesses. You're drawing on a different but valid way of processing information. The most important thing is to stop apologizing for how your mind works. That pause before you speak is valuable translation work. Your need for time to find the right words isn't a weakness. It's the natural result of having a more complex and nuanced way of understanding the world. Embracing your cognitive advantage. So what does it actually look like to embrace the holographic mind instead of fighting it? First, stop apologizing for pausing before you speak. That pause is necessary. It's you doing the hard work of translation, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're not slow or confused. You're processing complexity that linear thinkers can't even perceive. Second, use the communication tools that work for you. Metaphors, stories, writing, visual aids, whatever helps bridge the gap between your holographic understanding and verbal expression. These aren't crutches. They're sophisticated translation tools that honor how your mind actually operates. Third, surround yourself with people who are patient enough to let you fully express your thoughts. People who won't interrupt, who won't rush you, who understand that your way of thinking is different but valuable. When you find these people, protect those relationships, because they allow you to be authentic without constant translation pressure. Fourth, trust your intuitive knowing. Just because you can't explain how you know something doesn't mean you don't know it. Your holographic mind has processed more information than your conscious verbal mind can account for. When you get that feeling about a situation or person, that knowing is valid, even if you can't break it down into logical steps. The world desperately needs people who think the way you do. We need people who can see the forest and the trees simultaneously, who can hold complexity without needing to oversimplify it, who can sense what's coming before it's obvious to everyone else. That's you. That's the gift of the holographic INFJ mind. Your pattern recognition abilities make you invaluable as counselors, advisors, strategists, and creatives. You can help people see the bigger picture. You can identify problems that haven't fully emerged yet. You can find solutions that address root causes instead of just symptoms, because you see how everything connects. Instead of viewing your communication challenges as limitations, start seeing them as the natural result of having a more sophisticated cognitive system. Your mind operates like a high-performance computer that processes multiple data streams simultaneously. Of course, it takes effort to translate that into the simple, linear format that most communication requires. This cognitive architecture gives you access to insights that linear thinkers simply cannot reach. You notice subtleties in human behavior that others miss. You recognize patterns across different domains of life. You understand how changes in one area will ripple through interconnected systems. These are genuine superpowers, not mystical abilities. The key is learning to work with your mind, not against it. Stop trying to force yourself to think in words when your brain just doesn't work that way. Find environments and relationships that accommodate your natural processing style. Give yourself permission to take the time you need to translate your thoughts into language. Remember that translation takes effort, but that effort is worthwhile because what you're translating is genuinely valuable. Your holographic understanding contains depths and connections that linear thinking cannot access. When you share these insights, even imperfectly, you're offering something rare and needed. Start viewing yourself as someone with a different operating system, not someone with a communication problem. Your mind processes information in an interconnected, multidimensional way that gives you access to understanding others cannot reach. The challenge isn't changing how you think. It's finding ways to share that understanding effectively. Embrace the fact that your thoughts exist in a space beyond language. That's not a limitation. That's where the magic happens. That's where you see connections others miss. Understand people on deeper levels, and navigate complexity with grace that linear thinkers cannot match. Your mind operates holographically, processing information in an interconnected, multidimensional way that's completely different from linear verbal thinking. This makes communication challenging sometimes, but it also gives you pattern recognition abilities that are genuinely rare and valuable. You're not bad at explaining yourself. You're working with a different operating system. Translation takes effort, but that operating system lets you see things others miss and understand complexity with remarkable depth. Next time someone asks what you're thinking and you struggle to find words, remember your thoughts exist beyond language. That's not a limitation. That's a superpower. If you want to continue the journey to understanding yourself or an INFJ in your life, click either of the following videos, where we continue to unlock the secrets of the INFJ personality type.